Hey everybody, welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study for December the 30th. We are almost done with 2020. And I wish it were the case that when you finished, December 31st at 11:59, when 12 o'clock a.m. comes and we enter 2021, that was like a reset button. And it would be like we wake up and everything's okay and there's no trouble in the world, and it's going to be a great year. I hope it is a great year for you, for me, for everybody. But we'll take it one day at a time. But I am amazed how quickly this year has gone. We've just flown through 2020. And my prayer has been, I know yours is too, that 2021 is a much better year for everybody. I hope it is for you. I hope you have a much better year. If 2020 was a rotten year for you for whatever reason, I hope 2021 is a good one. Because the next time we come back together via video, it'll be 2021. So I guess I'll do the corny joke and say, I'll see you next year. Because that's true. I will see you next year. Hey, a couple of things tonight. This is going to be a different... I'm going to explain in just a minute what we're going to do. But a couple of things, including the explanation as to what we're doing. Number one, first of all, if you're joining us tonight via YouTube or Facebook, there's a couple of things we would love for you to do. If you're on YouTube, go below the video, give us a thumbs up. All right, that gives us it gives us an idea who was engaged in the video. We sort of get a count from that. Also, hit the subscribe button below the video, and what that does, it does two things. One, it gives us as we gain subscribers, it gives us more editing options, more publishing options. Secondarily, it tells you, the subscriber, when we have a new video on. So if you are following our videos and you pull up YouTube and you're just happening to look at a video, it might give you a notification that North Hamilton Church of Christ has a new video up. That's a great thing. Here's the second thing we ask with regard to Facebook. That is, if you're on Facebook, give us a thumbs up, but share the video. See, on Facebook, you have the ability to post something that you're viewing onto your own timeline. And if you'll do that, that tells everybody that's on your friends list that you're watching the video or you have watched the video, and it gives them the ability to watch it on your timeline as well. So you become a participant in what we're doing here in sharing the Bible message with your friends list. So that'd be great. So let me explain a couple of things about what's going on tonight. At North Hamilton tonight, as you're starting to view this at 7 p.m., we have our regular service. We're meeting tonight at 7 p.m., but our service tonight's a little bit different. Twice a year we have a prayer service. Our men are given a list early on with a number of topics. For example, praying for our police, first responders, and military. Prayers for the country, politically and otherwise. Prayers for our sick, prayers for the lost. Prayers for the congregation, for outreach, prayers for missionaries. We have all those categories. And our men lead us in prayers that are very specific to those categories. We have some songs filtered in. We have some comments at the end. I would encourage you, I believe that's going to be live streamed tonight as you're watching this. If you want to pause this video, this is saved. It's now cataloged on YouTube and Facebook. You can always come back to this video. If you want to go and join our live stream, we'd appreciate you doing that. It's very encouraging and edifying. It's super uplifting to engage in a congregation with prayer like that. To engage in prayer with the congregation is just an amazing thing. So if you want to do that, please do. Here's a third thing, and this regards our lesson for tonight. My goal tonight was to have an interim project. We are between studies right now, and remember, I said last week at the end of the video, and maybe at the beginning too, I need your suggestions. Tell me what we need to study. Do we need to go with a book of the Bible? Is there a book that you've been anxious to study and you've got some questions about it, or you're curious about the content? Or is there a subject matter that we could explore? I've got some suggestions already. A couple of books to study, books of the Bible, that is. And then I've got a topical discussion. I have about 2 topical discussions that have been recommended. But I'd love to hear from you. If there's something that you believe that is timely and pertinent, let me know, and we might be able to get that in. And our goal is to have that the first Wednesday of the new year, which will be next Wednesday. So that's our goal, is to have it then. That means tonight, because we're in an interim, we had planned on doing something different, but between last week and this week, I received a number of questions about our study on angels and demons. And since we're in sort of a swale, I guess, between studies, we're sort of not in limbo, but we are just between studies. We have basically a free night. I want to try to answer some of your questions on angels and demons. And so first of all, I really appreciate you getting in touch with me. I've had a couple of phone calls, and I had a couple of emails come in, even during the holidays, on our study of angels and demons, which helps me to know, and it is encouraging. You're watching these videos. That's so encouraging. Just keep on doing that. It's great that we can connect this way. But it also tells me that this is a great subject matter for a lot of folks. We may not know all the answers, but a lot of people have some curiosities. And I got about 2 or 3, 4 questions. And I want to go over the questions, and I want to answer those questions to the best of my ability. We're going to take a look together. And again, I just really appreciate you calling and taking the time to do that, even during the Christmas break. I know you're busy with family things, but it's great stuff when you can send questions, because it helps me to dig a little deeper, and it means you're digging deep too. All right, so here's the first question. Had someone call me this past week, and they had a question. Their question regards, we were talking about the identity of demons, and this is a really good question. Somebody asked, if demons were angels, okay, if they were angels, wicked angels, by the way, why would they want to possess the body of a person, right? Why would they want the body of a man or a woman? Because I think Acts 16, you have an example of a demon-possessed woman, and Paul casts the demon out of the woman, which spurs everything that follows at the end of chapter 16 of the book of Acts. I mean, beaten and thrown in jail, things of that sort. Okay, so if demons were angels, if they were wicked angels, why would they want the body of a person? That's a great question. Here's my thinking on this. If we remember, demon possession, everything we answer in this has to go back to the fact that demon possession was allowed by God for the purpose of showing the power of God. So whatever question we have always comes back to that general heading of, it was all part of the purpose of and the plan for showing God's power, specifically the power of Jesus in the first century, because really the phenomenon is limited to the first century. Remember, it said, I don't really see demon possession in the Old Testament. I don't know of a case in the Old Testament, unless you include Saul, and I'm not really sure about that. But if you look at demon possession as it's defined by the examples we have in the New Testament, it really seems like a New Testament phenomenon. And in every case, you have the Lord in some way, through his efforts, Jesus, or through the efforts of the disciples, he's casting them out. So you end up with this general context of demon possession was allowed for the purpose of their being cast out, for the purpose of showing the greater power of God. And Jesus even says as much. There's a demon possession in Matthew chapter 12, and you remember we've looked at it several times. And remember, the Pharisees, they come back later and they say, at the end of his casting out of the demon, they look at Jesus when the crowd begins to laud praises on him, and they say, well, he must have been doing it by the power of Beelzebub, They're trying to rob glory away from the Son of God. Verse 25 of Matthew 12. Jesus knew their thoughts, and he said to them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself will not stand. And if Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then will his kingdom stand? And if I cast out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do your sons cast them out? Therefore they shall be your judges. But if I cast out demons by the Spirit of God, surely the kingdom of God has come upon you. Now, to me, that's a significant statement in the general study of demon possession and demons, because Jesus is saying that he's not casting out demons by the power of Satan. Otherwise, that would be counterproductive to the efforts of Satan. He's casting them out by the power of God. And when he does that, it is proof in verse 28 that the kingdom of God is coming upon them. Okay, so what Jesus is saying is that his ability to cast out demons is part of his system of proof that allows him to, establish his identity as the Son of God and bring in the church, the kingdom of God. Just like, in some of our studies in the last couple of weeks, like in Matthew chapter 8, you've got a demon possession, and Jesus had the power in verse 16 of Matthew chapter 8 to tell the demon he needed to leave. And the demon had to honor the word of Christ. But in Mark chapter 1 verse 34, he could command demons to keep quiet, and they had to honor the word of Christ. It was all about establishing the fact that the Lord was preeminent. That's what demon possession was all about. Now, that being the case, it certainly implied that God either directly or indirectly commanded the angels, those wicked angels, to assume the body of men. There's two things here. One is Psalm 78. We looked at this last week, verse 49, where in the context of the plagues, it was talking about God sending angels during the ninth plague, the plague of darkness. And whatever that is, I don't know, but I do know in that passage it said God sent them. They were under the authority of God. And then you remember the story of Job? This would be another example I'm thinking of in my mind. Job chapter 1, you've got Job, who's a righteous man. He is literally being terrorized by a wicked angel. And this is, of course, assuming that demons are are wicked angels. But even if they were the departed spirits of wicked men, I think it still would be the case that here he's being terrorized by wicked angels, but that wicked angel only terrorized him because God allowed him to do it. Okay, so I think the answer to the question is why did they want to possess the body of a person? It has to be in some way because God told them or allowed them to do that. I don't know that it has as much to do with former affections as it is just about the authority of God. This was all part of a plan in the first century to establish one of the areas of superiority for Jesus. He did it over nature, he did it over the human body, he did it over disease, he did it over physical objects, whatever it may have been. He did it over unseen spirits, wicked spirits. And that's what demons proved. That's as good as I've got on that. Because ultimately we don't know. That's one of those questions, you live faithfully and I'll live faithfully, and one of us will make it. If God doesn't come back in our lifetime, one of us will make it to paradise before the other does. And if you get there, ask, and I won't have to ask when I get there. You come tell me the answer to that. But I think it has something to do with the fact that it was all part of a greater plan of showing the superiority of Jesus, which would mean it implies that God dispatched them to that end, to assume a human body and take control of the human body, physically that is. All right, so here's another question. This is a good question. I had somebody call me and ask, well, what about Lazarus? Right? Does not his resurrection prove that dead people could come back from Hades? That's very interesting, right? Because, and I even lent some credibility to that during our discussion of the last two theories on the identity of demons, because I think that's something that's hard to get over, that, right? When you're trying to figure out the identity of a demon, Lazarus coming back may lend some credibility to the demons are the departed spirits of wicked men theory. That was the number 3 theory that we looked at. Well, uh, I want to go to John chapter 11. I've got a notation here in my notes about John chapter 11. John chapter 11, and look at verse 43. Verse 43. This is in the context of Lazarus. Okay, when he had said these things, he cried with a loud voice, saying, Lazarus, come forth. And when he who had died came out, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, his face was wrapped with a loincloth. Jesus said to them, loose him and let him go. An amazing miracle for sure. Okay, so then verse 45. Many of the Jews who had come to Mary and had seen the things that Jesus did believed in him. But some of the men went away and told them the things that Jesus did. And back in verse 17 of that chapter, we learn that Lazarus, when Jesus gets to town, Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Okay, so he raises Lazarus, and he has them unbind Lazarus from the grave clothes, the bindings. That's the way they wrapped the body back then. It was like strips of linen, and it would be wrapped around the body. It wasn't mummification, but it would look like a mummy in the sense that they had tightly wrapped the body with spices and such to prevent the smell from coming out of the tombs. And in verses 43 to 46, the body had been in there 4 days, so it was a great miracle, an amazing miracle that the body of Lazarus had come out. Lazarus could be resurrected from the grave. So the question is, and the person that called said, look, what about this example of Lazarus? Because does not his resurrection from the grave prove that dead people can come back? Because I had been making the point that I think in Luke 16, when you're dealing with a different Lazarus, when you're dealing with the rich man and Lazarus, in that story, that account, you're sort of faced with the truth that once you're dead, you can't come back. And so somebody called and said, but what about John 11? It's a good question, okay? So here's my thinking on this, as I try to think through this. Number one, I believe that the resurrection of Lazarus and demon possession are not parallel situations. Okay, so they're not equal situations. When a demon possessed a body, it was the body of another person that they possessed, right? When the demon was cast out, you still had a living human being with a soul. So I don't know that you can say that a demon possession and the resurrection of Lazarus are parallel situations, because a demon possessed the body of another person, not his own body. When Lazarus came back, he possessed his own body. And you get that in verse 44, right? When Jesus has him come out, and notice the grave clothes are on him. His face was wrapped. Whose face? That's Lazarus. That's his own body. So he went back into his own body. Demons were wicked spirits. Lazarus was a righteous man. So they're not parallel, at least in their character either. And remember Matthew 12? You've got the story of a demon that left a body, and the owner of the body possessor, didn't do anything, and so the demon came back and brought 7 other wicked spirits, more wicked than himself. They were wicked in character. Lazarus was not a wicked man, he was a righteous man. Demons appeared to be opponents of Jesus Christ, but Lazarus was a friend of Jesus. He was a friend of the Lord's work. So I don't find a parallel between these. I don't know that really anything is proved by John chapter 11. Other than that, we really have no knowledge of Lazarus post-death or post-resurrection. There's just really nothing. We know eventually he would have gone back into the grave, but did he tell other people about his experience in the Hadean realm? Did he do that? I don't know. I know a lot of people say, I'm sure he would have told everybody, but was he even allowed to do that? Was he restricted in his speech? Remember, sometimes Jesus would say to people, he would work a miracle and he would say, please don't go tell anybody. And of demons, he would sometimes say, don't tell anybody what I've done. And they were required to do his bidding. Was Lazarus in some way restricted? I don't know the answer to that. But I do not believe that John chapter 11 gives us really insight into demons. I don't think it does, because they're not parallel situations. You're dealing with entirely different characters. Lazarus went back to his own body. Demons opposed the work of Jesus. Lazarus was a friend of the Lord. So I don't think they're parallel. And if that doesn't help, I'm so sorry. I know the person that asked the question, but I'm sorry if that doesn't satisfy. But I think that's as good as we've got on this. So here's number 3. Someone said, well, what about Jesus casting the demons, the legion, into the swine? Why did they want to go into the pigs? Okay, that's a great question. Why did they want the Lord to cast them into a group of pigs? Why did they want to go into the swine? Well, we have 3 accounts. There's not one in John, but there is one in Matthew chapter 8, verses 28 through 34. We have Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 17, and then Luke chapter 8, verses 26 through 36. Now, I obviously I'm not going to be able to cover every verse. I'm just going to make a couple of remarks, but if you want to go back through and look at these again, let me go back through these. Matthew chapter 8, if you're writing it down, verses 28 to 34. The account is found in Matthew. Mark chapter 5, verses 1 to 17. So you have sort of the extended version in Mark. You've got quite a bit more said about it there. And then Luke chapter 8, verses 26 through 36. So you have 3 accounts on legion confronting Jesus, Jesus confronting them, casting them out, and then because they desired the pigs, they wanted to go into the pigs. Now, let's go to Luke chapter 8, because there's a couple of things I want to note. And again, I can't cover every verse. If you want to read those passages and think about it a little bit more, you go back and do that on your own after the video. But Luke chapter 8, I think this is the key, okay? Verse 30, Jesus asked and said, what is your name? And he said, Legion, because many demons had entered him. And notice verse 31, to me, this is the answer. And they begged him that he would not command them to go out into the abyss. That's the key. That's the answer to this question. Why did they want to go into the pigs? Because they did not want to go into the abyss. Now the word deep here, the word abyss, probably abyss is a better translation, because abyss is really a transliteration. It's just you have the word abusos in the original language, and we just change a few letters and make an English word out of that. But the word abyss means bottomless. It's the word that literally means unbounded. It means the pit. One lexicographer defines it as the immeasurable depth. The abyss, a very deep gulf or chasm in the lowest parts of the earth. Okay, so the question is, are they just afraid of water? They didn't want to go into water. They are spirit beings. Why would they be afraid of a physical place if they're just spirit beings, right? In Romans chapter 10 and in verse 7, when you're reading Romans 10, the word deep or abyss is actually used interchangeably with the word death. Here's Romans 10, and the reference is in verse 7, Romans chapter 10. And here's what Paul says in Romans 10, verse 7. He says, who will descend into the abyss? That is to bring Christ up from the dead. So dead or death and abyss are used interchangeably right there. And in Revelation chapter 20, when you read about the deep, you have sort of a figurative reference to the binding of Satan, but he uses the word pit in translation, which is the word abyss. That makes me think what they're really afraid of here is not the water. They weren't afraid of the water or the deep water. We can't swim. Please don't send us out into deep water. How can we tread water? That's not what they're saying. This really reminds me of 2 Peter 2 and verse 4, where the wicked angels are reserved in chains of darkness in Tartarus, in torment unto judgment. What they're really afraid of in this passage is being sent back to the side of the Hadean realm that is a side of torment. So I think what they're talking about here is Tartarus, the reference that you'll see in 2 Peter 2 and verse 4, and you can look at that word probably in your marginal note, or maybe a center column reference, something somewhere to explore that word. They're worried about the torment of Hades. So why did they want to go to the pigs then? Because that's their request. Don't send us into the abyss. At least send us into this herd of swine. Um, I like the way one writer framed this. He goes, Infernals preferred a human residence to a bestial one, but they preferred a bestial one to their own infernal home. In other words, they would much rather be in a pig. They'd rather be in a human, but they'd rather be in a pig than go back to the abyss. Okay? Now, what follows their possession of the pigs might help explain why they did that. Because when you go to Mark chapter 5, in Mark's account, and turn my Bible real quick to Mark chapter 5. Mark chapter 5, and look at verse 13. And at once Jesus gave them permission. Notice they had to have divine permission to do that. So then the unclean spirits went out, entered the swine. There were about 2,000 swine. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea and drowned into the sea. And those who fed the swine fled, and they told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that happened. And then they came to Jesus and saw the one who had been demon-possessed and had legion sitting and clothed in his right mind, and they were afraid. And of course, in verse 16, those who saw it told them how it happened to those who had been demon-possessed and about the swine. And they began to plead with him to depart from their region. Verse 18, he got in the boat. He who had been demon-possessed begged him that he might be with him. And you see what happens as a result is they're sort of unconcerned, really, about the man that had been demon-possessed. What they ended up doing was, by their actions, they turned some of the residents of that area against Jesus because of they had been economically impacted by the ruin of the swine. But here's the point. To Jesus, a man is more important than a pig. Jesus saved the man. The pigs were not nearly as important as the man. So he showed his priority over the person. But to Satan, to the devil, a pig is every bit as good as a man. Okay, so maybe that's the life lesson to be learned here. This is, reason number 101 why we don't serve Satan. You don't matter to Satan. He doesn't value you any more than he values a herd of pigs. But to the Lord, you're more important than anything. And that's what this parable, not a parable, but that's what this miracle is all about. So these were really great questions. I really appreciate that. It was not really the goal to do a Q&A session on demons tonight, but why not? We had some free time to do it, and I think it was great to be able to address these. Appreciate very much you tuning in, and first of all, that you even contacted us. That just thrills me when I get an email or a call from you and you want to talk about these things. So next week, we'll have a brand new study. Until then, have a great New Year's Eve and a great New Year's Day. Please be safe. Lord willing, we'll see you all on Sunday. If you're not even a member at North Hamilton, please come be with us. We'd love to have you. We have a requested sermon for Sunday, and it hopefully is going to be a very encouraging and a very inspiring sermon. So I hope you'll be with us on Sunday to be a part of that. Would love to visit with you, and you always have a place at North Hamilton. You're welcome to be there as our guest, and we want to see you and befriend you if we've never met you before. Otherwise, members, hope to see you Sunday. Love you very much. Please have a great New Year's and New Year's Day, New Year's Eve. Be safe and keep yourself and your family safe as best you can, but don't stop living life and loving the Lord. I love you, and I'll see you soon.